going to tell you guys a story. So I was in the Middle East this week, sorry. And I had this crazy experience where I was trying to understand what was going on in China. And so I started on CNN, and the whole thing was the propaganda machine around a democratic revolt, pushing for democracy and trying to depose Xi. Then I moved to Al Arabiya. So one channel up, I went from channel 10 to channel 11. And instead, what they were actually doing was interviewing people on the ground. And what they were talking about was literally how these PCR tests have become far too burdensome, and they just wanted it to end and more reasonable restrictions to get in and out of quarantine. Then I went from there to BBC. And in BBC, they had a China scholar who was talking about how for decades, actually, the Communist Party supports local level protests and demonstrations because they've realized that it is a part of their political system to make sure that people feel like they have a say. And I was like taking a step back, and I'm like, if you listen to the US narrative, and even Jason, like in our group chat, people fomenting for like revolution, and this is Tiananmen 2.0. And I'm like, well, I'm reading two other channels that tell us a completely different set of things. And I just thought, man, people just really fit the data.
Such a good point.
To fit their bias.
Yeah, we are projecting. We want to see a revolution in China. The people in China want to have their lives back. I would love to see more democracy in the world. Yes, guilty as charged. I would like to see people be more free in the world. Dictator.
I think most people just want to improve their condition. And I don't think people are as tied up on the philosophy of the government as they are about improving their condition. And as long as their condition is improving, they're willing to put up with any form of government. And history shows that.
By the way, the conditions in China have improved better than everybody's in the last
It's better than anyone
moved 500
in
million people out of abject poverty. And that's the great success of engagement. Isolationism would not have created that amazing outcome. 500 million people going out of abject.
You're referring to us
Apple building factories.
You're
Apple
saying
building factories is what I'm referring to.
Oh, okay,
Instead
fine.
of you guessing.
If they want to build something over there, I guess that's better than us throwing open our markets and giving China MFN status to destroy American manufacturing and build up their economy so they can become a peer competitor to the United States.
Yeah, I mean, this is the balance of engagement, isn't it?
Sachs,
if you engage too much, you give everything up.
Sachs, which of the current Republican agenda do you disagree with most strongly, just as an aside?
Well, most Republicans are in favor of our Ukraine policy, this sort of unlimited appropriation of weapons and aid to them.
Don't you disagree with immigration policy of Republicans and Democrats?
Well, I have a more nuanced position on immigration, which is I think we need to have a border. And it can't be just like an open border, which is the de facto policy we have now. But at the same time, I do think that we should have H-1B visas, and we want to, like Tomas said, we want to be an all-star team for the world. We want to have the best people who want to come here. So there's a balance. It's a balance. Yeah. And then, look, I think that I was happy to see the marriage equality bill finally passed the Senate. Yes, they did get about
12 Republicans voted for it.
12 Republicans supported it, so that's
awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
But that's not the majority, unfortunately. Look, on what I would categorize as the old social issues, like gay marriage, like cannabis legalization, I was on the liberal side. Yeah, I don't think, banning abortion entirely, a total abolition is going to work for this country. I think Republicans will lose elections if they insist on that, and I think they're getting that message. So yeah, I mean, look, I think that I've always considered myself to be pretty centrist.
And so you're not a globalist. You don't believe in open global markets with the U.S.
In general, I understand the benefits of free trade, and I don't think we should be isolationist with respect to trade. I don't think that we can be a successful country if we isolate our economy. So I do want to trade. However, with China in particular, I think we made a mistake in throwing open our markets to their products, giving them MFN status, while
most favored nation.
Yes, enriching them to the point where they became a peer competitor of the United States. Now, look, I understand why we made that mistake 20 years ago, because everybody thought the theory was that if we helped China become rich, that China would inevitably become more democratic and they'd be filled with gratitude towards the United States, and they'd actually become more hospitable towards us, more westernized. And I think that theory has just proven to be wrong. I mean, they have not.
Or it's going very slowly. One or the other. Let's own our clips here. Here is Chamath's prediction from episode 61, and we'll see you on the other side of this quick clip.
My worldwide biggest political winner for 2022 is Xi Jinping. I think this guy is, he's firing on all cylinders, and he is basically ascendant. So 2022 marks the first year where he's essentially really ruler for life. And so I don't think we really know what he's capable of and what he's going to do. And so that's just going to play out.
You think he's the biggest political winner, really?
Oh my God. I think it's going to be he's going to run roughshod, not just domestically, but also internationally, because you have to remember, he controls so much of the critical supply chain that the Western world needs to be.
I think you're completely wrong. I think you're completely wrong. I think he's losing his power. He's scared. That's why he took out all these CEOs. He's consolidating power because he fears that they're going to win too big and then displace him. And he has massive real estate problems over there that could blow up at any moment in time. He could face a civil war there. I think he's totally isolated himself.
Civil war? They don't even have guns.
Every major country is removing their factories and removing this dependency.
They don't even have any guns there. What are you talking about? What are they going to riot with?
Did you not see Tiananmen Square? Did you not see the riots in Hong Kong? Are you not paying attention, Chamath? There's been many riots in China. They just happened to kill all the people.
Those were crushed. And that's
I'm not saying they will be crushed, but he still will have massive amounts of, I believe, protests, and he'll have to kill people.
I think the bigger risk is that China gets better for Xi Jinping, but worse for everybody else in China. It's already worse for all the billionaires over there. It's worse for the tech industry. You've now got Evergrande, that whole gigantic debt implosion. I think there could be contagion from China next year. I don't think Xi's going to lose his grip in any way, but I'm not sure China's going to have a good year next year.
Wow. Nailed it. I think all three of us kind of got this right.
What are you talking about? You got none of it right.
Well, I said there were going to be riots and they're going to have a recession.
Jason, let's be honest.
Said that they would be squashed. That's exactly what happened. Both things happened.
I actually think I have a pretty decent ability to steelman pretty concretely the details. I think that at best, when it comes to things like democracy and your belief in U.S. exceptionalism in a specific political worldview, at best you strawman. And I think that you get very biased without seeing the forest from the trees. The reason I said that is not because I'm like, some huge Xi supporter. I'm just trying to steelman what happens when one individual person gets anointed leader for life of 1.3 billion people that then controls 20% of the world's GDP. There is no other single human being as powerful as him as of this month.
Can I just say that this show is going to become insufferable if every time you sort of said something in the past that was sort of correct, we're going to have to replay it?
I was actually playing that one for you, Sachs. I think you're the one who nailed it. I was giving that was a softball to you, actually.
I nail it every week, J. Cal.
All right,
this show's going to slow down if we play every clip that I got right.
You guys are asking to pull clips all the time. I just pulled one clip about China where you nailed it.
No. Look, I think and also look what he did.
The king of pull a clip.
The Evergrande thing, look what he did this week. They said, okay, you know what? The real estate industry can now issue secondary stock sales, raise equity and equitize themselves. So they're going to find a soft landing for the equity part for the real estate industry in China. And now they're reopening. So I don't know. I'm not sure what we're supposed to comment. What I will stand by is what I said, which is I don't think we have a very clear view about what's going on, what the substance of these protests are, and what people actually want if you're only consuming US media. And so if you find a way to get a diet from a bunch of different sources all around the world, you may get a better sense. I had an accidental window into that by being in a completely different part of the world this past week.
Freeberg, any final thoughts on China and what's going on there before we move on to ChatGPT? Your favorite story.
I think one of the things we often miss is that China, the CCP, does have their hand on the throttle. Like, they throttle up and down. We always think that it's a linear line and that it's super dogmatic and fixed, but there's certainly responsiveness. And the release of the lockdowns in Guangzhou and Beijing this week seems to have been a pretty good indication that when things do get, when the tides do change, leadership there seems to respond. Not always, but enough to kind of keep things going. So
Should they reopen? I think it's 60% of the population or so is vaccinated with obviously vaccines that maybe aren't as, don't have the same efficacy as the ones here in the United States. Do you think they should open up and just let it rip? Or do you think they should still try to maintain this zero COVID policy? Because that is the debate right now.
From what point of view, what's the objective? Because obviously,
I'm asking you. Yeah.
Well, from the objective of economic growth, they need to open up and they need to keep their economy working and they need to keep their labor force engaged, or else they're going to continue to suffer. So if economic growth is the objective, they need to open up, right? If the long-term health cost of the nation balanced against that is the calculus that they're kind of weighing, there's probably some more nuance to that. And certainly, my understanding is there may be a precedent setting, which is, hey, we've said that it's a zero COVID policy, therefore we have to hold strict to it, toe the line. Else it looks like we're weak. And so there's also this, maintaining the authority of the CCP objective. So there's a lot of maybe competing objectives right now. Certainly don't have a sense of how they're weighing them all. But I think that once all those videos came out this week,
yeah,
you guys saw them, but people were screaming. There was an apartment on fire where the doors were locked with steel beams on the base of the building. At least that's what the video said. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but that's what was said. And clearly people are extremely distraught and unhappy with the conditions of the lockdown. At some point, enough people with enough loud voices, something's going to change. I mean, let's just remember, like, the bargain that's struck in that country and with all countries is that, the citizenry to some extent are willing to tolerate their government so long as their conditions continue to improve. And there's a bargain. There's some bargain that's struck. And as soon as that bargain starts to go south for the citizenry, then that governing entity is at risk. And I think that that's what we sort of started to see this week, was the conditions are getting far, far worse and far less livable for so many people in that country that the government had to shift.
Do you think, Chamath, this COVID strategy, and then we'll move on, was basically Xi Jinping wanting to get to that Congress, his coronation, and now that that's over, maybe he can change gears and then...
Like I said, my belief is that I have a very poor access to enough data to steelman what is actually going on there. But one explanation could actually be that in the absence of enough hospital infrastructure and ventilators and a bunch of these other things, they had to take a pretty severe approach to this disease. I don't know what they know or didn't know. Maybe they understood, the virulence of it. Maybe that they have slightly different aging characteristics of their population. Maybe they genetically responded to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. I don't know any of these things enough to tell you, Jason.
Yeah.
But the reality is what Friedberg says is right, which is that you cannot grow an economy if people are inside locked in their apartments. And it looks like they have decided that that's coming to an end, and they're going to, deconstruct all of these things. So, the Chinese growth engine is coming back. And I think that that's going to be an important factor economically that we're going to have to figure out, because it's going to have a huge implication to American growth and American inflation.
Sachs, if in fact if the lab leak theory is correct, China might have some insights into this disease that maybe the West didn't. Maybe that plays into their policy a bit. Any final thoughts here?
Jake, I'm just surprised to hear that you have a problem with their lockdown policy over there. Because aren't they just implementing Democratic Party orthodoxy? I mean, isn't this the policy that Tony Fauci and Barbara Ferrer, that all the health experts...
I was not in favor of lockdowns. What are you talking about? You're the one who had all your masks and had ventilators day one.
Isn't this the
why are you
lockdown
painting
policy?
This? Why am I getting
because you'll defend the Democratic Party.
I'm just asking a question as the moderator.
Isn't this basically...
Why am I getting a stray?
Isn't this what Gavin
Don't
Newsom...
deflect, Jake. I'll answer the question.
Yes. Hold on. Let me finish the question.
Lockdowns. I was in favor of if people wanted to stay home. And then if people wanted to go out and take the risk, take the risk. I was always in personal choice.
Isn't this what Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan and Gavin Newsom in California subscribed to? The idea that the way to fight COVID was through lockdowns. Now, yes, Newsom had 10 pages of exceptions for his political donors.
Absolutely.
And he didn't use the police to lock people in apartment buildings. He may have wanted to, but they didn't actually do that. But can you really tell me that this lockdown policy has been disavowed by people like Fauci or by the health authorities like the Barbara Ferrers of this world? They still subscribe to this view.
Do they? Really? Is anybody doing lockdowns now?
Show me. Well, they're not able to do it because no one agrees anymore.
Yeah.
But tell me where anybody... Tell me where any of the health experts who said that lockdowns were the correct response have repented and disavowed that view.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been tracking their mea culpas. But you yourself were in favor of lockdowns for a period of time. Yes, you were.
No,
you absolutely were. I'll pull the tape for the next episode.
I was in favor of a mask mandate. No, it's not true. I was in favor of a mask mandate, and I said the mask mandate was the alternative to lockdowns.
Okay,
I was saying that by May of 2020.
All right, listen. Let's move on to the next thing. I'm an independent. I don't represent the Democratic Party. I don't represent Fauci.
No, you represent mainstream media.
I do not represent mainstream media. You just said I was an old school journalist who's mortified with where it is today.
I'm giving you a hard time. I thought your explanation was fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, Jake, I'm giving you a hard time too. I know that you were not a big lockdown proponent, but you understand the point I was making.
I do understand your point.
There were a lot of proponents
let's stop making me the Democratic spokesperson.
I just want to let you guys know I'm feeling a lot better after my beer.